Hello and welcome back to OpSynergy Project Management Training. If you are preparing for the PMP exam or managing projects in the real world, we have a lesson today that is absolutely essential, and that is a lesson about smoothing and leveling. Smoothing and leveling are not just textbook ideas. They are tools that determine whether your project runs with stability or with constant fire drills. Today, we are going to break these concepts down slowly, clearly, and with real-world logic so you can apply them with confidence. And hey, please don't forget to subscribe. So again, today we are diving deep into one of the most misunderstood but most powerful schedule control concepts in project management with smoothing and leveling. These two techniques sit at the intersection of scheduling, resource management, cost control, and human performance. If you truly understand smoothing and leveling, you gain control over the most dangerous risk in any project: unrealistic workload expectations. By the end of this lesson, you will not only understand what smoothing and leveling are, but how they protect your team, your budget, your timeline, and your credibility as a project manager. Before we even define smoothing and leveling, you must understand the problem they were created to solve. Every project schedule is built in a perfect planning environment. We assume people are always available. We assume productivity is consistent. We assume work can always be shifted freely. None of that is true in the real world. People take leave, equipment breaks, priorities shift, emergency work appears, illness happens, fatigue builds, performance fluctuates. Yet your schedule still demands results as if none of that exists. Smoothing and leveling exist because project schedules are built on logic, but executed by humans. These techniques help align logical task sequencing with actual human capacity. So, what is resource leveling really? Well, resource leveling is the process of adjusting a project schedule to reflect the actual availability of resources. When the demand for a resource exceeds what is realistically available, you must change the schedule. You are no longer optimizing speed, you are optimizing feasibility. Leveling is used when a resource is overallocated beyond what is physically or operationally possible. That means one person, one team, or one piece of equipment has been scheduled to do more work than they can realistically handle in the same time window. When you apply leveling, the system delays tasks until the resource becomes available. This almost always increases the total project duration. That is not a failure. That is realism entering the schedule. Imagine one engineer is scheduled to complete 3 full-time technical tasks during the same week. On paper, the software allows it. In reality, the engineer cannot physically do all 3 at full capacity. Resource leveling pushes one or more of those tasks later in the schedule. The project now reflects what is actually possible, not what looks fast on paper. So what's the psychological importance of leveling? One of the most overlooked benefits of leveling is what it does psychologically to a team. When people are repeatedly scheduled beyond their capacity, they stop trusting the plan. They assume everything is unrealistic. They start ignoring deadlines. They start cutting corners. They stop escalating risk because they believe nothing will change anyway. When you level resources, you send a powerful message. The plan is realistic. The workload is achievable. Leadership understands human limits. That single shift dramatically improves performance discipline across the project. So, what does resource smoothing mean in real operations? Resource smoothing is not about fixing impossible schedules. It is about optimizing stressful schedules without changing the project finish date. The deadline is fixed. The delivery date is protected. Instead of extending the project, you adjust how work is distributed over time. Smoothing only works when tasks have built-in schedule flexibility. That flexibility is called float. If a task can move without delaying the final delivery, it can be smoothed. Smoothing shifts workloads out of peak stress periods into lower demand periods while keeping the same end date. The project duration stays locked. The strain on the team decreases. Performance stabilizes. If leveling is about making the plan possible, smoothing is about making the plan sustainable. Float is the only reason smoothing works. If no float exists, there is nothing to shift. When tasks have float, you gain temporary flexibility without affecting the delivery milestone. Smoothing exploits that flexibility for workforce balance. This is why experienced project managers actively protect float. Float is not wasted time. It is a control buffer. It allows for workload balancing, risk response, and schedule optimization without destroying delivery commitments. This is the defining difference between the two concepts. Leveling changes the project end date because it resolves impossible demand. You cannot squeeze more work out of a resource than physical capacity allows. Something has to move. The finish date absorbs the impact. Smoothing does not change the finish date because it only uses existing schedule flexibility. You are moving work that already had permission to move. This single rule drives nearly every exam question and real-world decision tied to smoothing and leveling. When smoothing and leveling are ignored, the project starts strong and collapses in execution. Early milestones appear on track. Everyone feels optimistic, and then workload collisions hit. People become overloaded. Errors rise. Rework increases. Communication suffers. Decision latency increases. Leadership pressure escalates. Turnover risk appears. Budget starts bleeding through inefficiency instead of poor spending. Almost no failing project fails because of bad ideas. Most fail because execution becomes overloaded and chaotic. Smoothing and leveling prevent that collapse. In large programs, smoothing and leveling operate not just at the individual level, but across entire departments. A cybersecurity team may support multiple projects. A procurement office may serve 10 programs at once. A training division may deliver across multiple contracts. If you only level inside your project and ignore enterprise capacity, conflicts simply shift from one project to another. Advanced project managers coordinate smoothing and leveling across portfolio structures, not just within one schedule. This is where project management becomes organizational leadership, not just task sequencing. One of the most dangerous errors in project management is using smoothing to fix a leveling problem. If resources are truly overallocated and there is no float, smoothing becomes a temporary illusion. The overload still exists. It is simply hidden behind rearranged tasks. Eventually, execution reaches a wall, deadlines start slipping, emergency overtime becomes normalized, and the project enters permanent recovery mode. You smooth when flexibility exists. You level when feasibility is violated. Conversely, leveling without stakeholder alignment is just as dangerous. When a deadline is contractually fixed, regulatory-driven, or publicly committed, leveling without approval creates legal and reputational risk. A leveled schedule that violates external commitments may be operationally sound and politically disastrous. This is why communication is inseparable from technical schedule control. Finally, leveling often increases direct cost because extended duration increases overhead. Smoothing often reduces indirect cost because over time, rework and burnout decrease. This is why cost forecasting is inseparable from resource optimization. A fast schedule is not always the cheapest schedule. A balanced schedule is often the most economical. Smoothing and leveling in agile and hybrid environments. Even in agile and hybrid delivery, smoothing and leveling still apply. Sprint capacity planning is a form of leveling. Work in progress limits operate like smoothing. When teams repeatedly exceed sprint velocity, you are witnessing a leveling failure. When work is redistributed across iterations without changing release targets, you are witnessing smoothing in action. The terminology may change, the logic never does. PMP exam logic simplified. On the PMP exam, questions will always give you clues. If the schedule deadline is allowed to change and resources are overloaded, the answer is leveling. If the deadline is fixed and float exists, the answer is smoothing. If no float is mentioned and overload exists, the answer is leveling. If float is mentioned and delivery must not slip, the answer is smoothing. The exam is not testing definitions. It is testing whether you recognize feasibility versus optimization. Resource leveling adjusts the project schedule to match real resource availability. It prioritizes feasibility over speed. Resource smoothing adjusts how work is distributed within existing schedule flexibility. It prioritizes sustainability without changing delivery commitments. Leveling protects reality. Smoothing protects endurance. Project managers who master these techniques do not just control schedules, they control chaos. That brings us to the end of our deep dive on smoothing and leveling. These are not just exam topics. These are leadership tools that protect your people and stabilize your execution under pressure. If this lesson helped sharpen your understanding, be sure to stay connected with OpSynergy as we continue building real-world project management mastery one discipline at a time.